radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 143, recorded on Saturday, February 22nd from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we take a look at the colonial history of the country of Haiti. And we have a guest!
What's up, everybody? My name is Jean-Pierre Saint-Louis, also known as JP Too Much St. Louis.
Why do you have a different name? What's the too much? What do you do? Are you a e-gamer?
An e-gamer?
I mean, I would like to get into that eventually, but JP Too Much is just from my fight nickname. I'm a professional MMA fighter.
Where are you fighting currently?
Where I'm fighting out of Florida, Orlando, Florida, and I'm the welterweight champion of Combat Night. It's an organization out in Florida, one of the top organizations down here. But then I've also fought in various other top regional promotions around the country.
Holy crap. Oh my God, that's so cool.
Yeah, how long before you're in the UFC working for that scumbag Dana White?
No comment on that part. Yeah, I still would like to work for him one day. But honestly, that's one of those questions that I get asked, and it's like I really have no idea.
Yeah, you obviously no control over that.
Yeah. By some people's metrics, it's like I should already be there, but I'm not. And I feel like one of those things I always like to say is that nothing is really, like, you don't deserve anything. You kind of earn it. And even if I feel like I should be somewhere, I haven't earned it yet. So I try to keep that mindset so I don't, get overly annoyed and start to, hate what I do. It's like I should be where, because I should be where all these guys are. And then, you start to get a little bitter and jaded, right. And that can really cloud up your mind. So I'm just like, well, I guess I haven't earned the right to be there yet.
That is probably a very good mindset to have.
Yeah, man. I love it.
So obviously doing the episode on Haiti this week, and it is part of our Black History Month series that we've been doing for the last couple of years, and it always feels a little awkward for me and Joe.
What are you saying, Jason?
Very, very...
What are you saying?
Very vanilla white guys to talk about these topics. So the reason why I reached out to you, or how I knew you previously, we actually worked together briefly. You are also an IT professional on the side, so if anybody is on the lookout for anybody to do some IT work, especially remotely, or I guess locally in the Florida area,
get them.
Yeah, we'll give you all the information.
Yes, please. I'll gladly take that. I'm on the market.
Yeah.
And if you didn't maybe already guess based on your name, you are a Haitian American.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, but first generation American. Both my parents were born in Haiti, and I think my family got here 70s, 80s. So it hasn't even been like too long either.
Right. So during like the Duvalier period.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're going to get into here. So starting off, why did we want to do the history of Haiti, the colonial history of Haiti, specifically during the run-up to the election last year? Legal Haitian immigrants living in the United States were vilified by conservatives, particularly by now President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance, because they committed the crime of moving into the community of Springfield, Ohio, and filling open jobs.
God forbid.
Yeah, primarily.
How dare they?
Yeah, that's not in Donald Trump's America, I'll tell you that. And the new residents were told that they did not belong there. It was falsely claimed that they were in the country illegally. It still is constantly, especially by J.D. Vance, that he doesn't believe that the program that they were here under is legal. So he still constantly calls them illegal immigrants.
Which is still just baffling,
yes.
By the way. I need to point that out.
And as we all heard during the presidential debate, they were slandered with the accusation that they were eating animals in the parks and even their neighbors' pets. They're eating the dogs.
Yeah.
And the geese.
Wild accusations. I don't know if you remember this, but it was a few years back, and they were saying that Haitians eat trees. You guys remember that?
No, I don't.
There's always been different accusations that people make towards Haitians, and I've been dealing with, I would say, not the accusations as much as the repercussions of people's ignorant biases or prejudices or whatever stupid thing and I'm trying not to curse.
Oh no, we moved into the explicit era of our podcast.
Yeah, you're definitely
recently,
allowed.
so yeah.
But yeah, whatever dumb shit people are trying to say about Haitians, I've been hearing it for a long time, and I know we're gonna get into it later, but they're like it's a little bit different now, but growing up being Haitian was not like a cool thing. And I think during the 80s, there was like this time period where people were saying that Haitians brought AIDS, HIV to the country.
Yeah.
There was that accusation, and, Haitians are dirty. Can't tell you how many times I heard people say in like school that it's like, oh, you're from the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
Over and over. There was all types of stuff. Granted, I would always have something back to, like, I'd have something counter to almost everything people ever said, because I was always proud of being Haitian, and a lot of people, they would hide their Haitian heritage, and that's something that, one, I was never doing. Two, there was no hiding my Haitian heritage with a name like Jean-Pierre Saint-Louis. It's like every single class of the first school year, it's like they're gonna say your name out. They mess it up every single time because I do have a pretty long name. But yeah, this Trump and JD Vance saying this, like for me, I was just like, oh, here we go. It's almost like a perennial thing. It's no one saying anything about Haitians, and then all of a sudden there's some accusation that Haitians are doing something else, and it's like, you guys this will never end. It feels like.
Mm-hmm.
That's so fucked up.
Yeah, well, and even when you said not so much recently, if anyone wants to look up any pictures of JP, as there are a few online, that's why not so much recently. It's not that the hate's not there, but no one's going to say it to your face.
Yeah, that is a lot. They might say it on the internet, but they don't say it to my face. But I will say, it's like, I think Haitian culture has slowly been a little bit more accepted in a sense, and that's mostly due to like the hip hop community has embraced Haitians more, and especially in Miami, where Miami Haitians, there are words from Haitian Creole has made its way into slang, AVE, or like colloquialisms, however you want to call it, in that Miami area. So it's actually been pretty cool to see that transition from, I remember when being Haitian was not cool and people were like hiding from it, running from it. And now you're seeing a blending of the culture and more of an acceptance, and kind of like how a community in close contact with each other would normally be if there's not, a lot of hate.
Right.
Like an example is in Creole, jouet means like game, toy. That's also like not translated, but it's gone into the culture in Miami itself, where people will say like, give me the jouet, it's pretty cool seeing that. And it's even like blown up on TikTok and things of that nature.
Nice.
And this is why we needed diversity on our podcast.
Yeah.
Which I think we might be breaking a new federal law right now, but it's okay.
Here in Wisconsin, you never know, man.
Oh yeah, Wisconsin. There is like no Haitians in Wisconsin.
No.
They're all in Chicago, which, cool fun fact, Chicago was found by a Haitian man.
Really?
Or he played a big role in Chicago's finding. Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable was born in Haiti, 18th century, is considered the founder of Chicago. He was a trader, entrepreneur, and pioneer who established the first permanent settlement in the area that would become Chicago.
Dang.
Yeah,
I
very.
don't know if I said it, Point du Sable. I think
Not the first time that a Haitian French name is going to be mispronounced in this episode.
Oh yeah, especially it's like it wasn't my first language, so sometimes I'm gonna mispronounce certain things. But I know I got that Jean-Baptiste on lock.
So you had the president and vice president spreading these lies and slandering Haitian immigrants. Criminal charges were filed by the Haitian Bridge Alliance against Trump and Vance for their blatantly false and dangerous rhetoric. And then as a result of those criminal charges...
Oh God, I remember this.
Yes, we reported on this when it happened.
Yeah.
But the racist piece of shit representative from Louisiana, of all places, Louisiana, Clay Higgins, posted this on Twitter. These Haitians are wild. Eating pets, voodoo, nastiest country in the Western Hemisphere, cults, slapstick gangsters, but damned if they don't feel all sophisticated now. Filing charges against our president and our VP. All these thugs better get their mind right and their ass out of our country before January 20th. So that is the representative of Louisiana's 3rd District, Clay Higgins, just being openly racist against Haitians, calling them slapstick gangsters. And of course, he has to defend their God King Donald Trump.
Well, and on top of that, it goes even further saying, how they feel all sophisticated now. Like, I'm fucking sorry. What?
It's just ignorance is plaguing this country right now.
It very much is.
I'm not going to say right now. It has been for a while.
Right.
But
and what I was going to say too is they just really it's been preserved for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have a note on Clay Higgins that only months before he was elected to the House, he had to resign from his position as captain in the sheriff's department following criticism of a Crime Stoppers video that he made in which he called gang members animals and heathens. He has also had a long history of disciplinary problems, including unprofessional behavior and using his position for personal gain, something that is now encouraged in our politicians.
Right.
He was also forced to resign as a patrol officer in 2007 after admitting to striking a suspect who was in handcuffs. Obviously, like most police officers, he was just moved to a different area and resumed his career. He also supported the 1991 Louisiana gubernatorial campaign of KKK leader David Duke.
So upstanding guy is what you're saying.
Right, yeah. Completely not a racist.
Louisiana is not sending us their best.
What was that comedian? Was it not Joe Coy, someone who they were banning him from Louisiana because he said cut them off of the US. Who the hell wants to go to Louisiana? And so many people from Louisiana got super pissed about it.
Pretty much all those real southern states, they're the poorest states in the country. They never do anything to fix it, and they think that the real problem is too much welfare.
Tom Segura.
That's who it is, Tom Segura. And yeah, that is always blaming welfare, and I would say that you can partly blame, or not partly, but Ronald Reagan, another shitty person with
one of the worst presidents.
Yeah, call them welfare queens or welfare princesses or something like that. It's my trickle down economics isn't the issue; it's people on welfare.
Right.
It's specifically the black people that are on welfare.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, it's just, you can see a very direct through line to Ronald Reagan's rhetoric to even what we just talked about with Donald Trump. It's just constantly finding some type of group of color that we should just spread tons of hate around, and then just villainizing and demonizing those people as hard as you can. And then we just ignore the rest of the problem.
Well, and it's, how do you get white people who are on welfare to vote for
Republicans
getting rid of welfare?
Right.
And it's to tell them that black people are using welfare to get rich. And that's how you do it.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate because it's one, it doesn't do anything, and two, it's they're not for you either, right? And it makes me think of there was this documentary I was watching, but what we were saying, these extremely poor areas, poverty-stricken areas, lack of resources, all the white people that are affected by that, but how they're usually the most diehard Republicans, and they will regurgitate that same hateful rhetoric. They think the issues that they're facing is immigrants' fault or black people's fault, when in reality it's the people you're voting for, they don't care about you at all.
Yeah, and it's something that it definitely is happening right now.
I find it crazy. I mean, I even find it crazy that it's we have a president that has merch and people are it's flying off the shelves. It's
right.
It's
are you telling me you didn't buy the $300 gold Trump shoes,
the sneakers?
Trump kicks,
or whatever that stupid watch he had that he was selling.
Yeah.
It's crazy. If you would have told me, if this would have happened 2008, if you would have said that something like this would happen in 2008, people would be like, "What are you?"
They'd have burned the White House down.
Right.
It's people are storming the Capitol. Are you serious?
Right.
So ever since we first reported those stories, they're eating the dogs, and Clay Higgins' response to the lawsuit, we have been promising to do this episode on the history of Haiti. Clay Higgins says nastiest in the Western Hemisphere. As JP pointed out, he was told repeatedly as a kid, poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. So let's look into the history of Haiti and see how it got there. Pre-Columbian history. Obviously, Haiti's got a long history that doesn't have anything to do with Christopher Columbus, white explorers.
No. Really? That's wild.
You mean people were doing stuff before?
Right, there were people
colonizers
there.
came around?
No way.
So we're not going to explore that very long history prior to colonization. It is in some ways prehistoric. There's not very good records about that, and you'll see probably why shortly. But it was the island was inhabited by multiple indigenous tribes, primarily the Taino and Siboney, probably mispronouncing that. They subsisted by farming, fishing, and trading with other nearby islands. The island was then known as Haiti, which is where we get the current name Haiti from, or Quisqueña.
Fun fact, so the word Haiti was, from the Taino, their language, what they called it, and what it stands for is land of mountains or mountainous country. And if you've ever seen pictures of Haiti, or eventually people go there, it's actually really beautiful. A lot of hills, mountains, the greenery is amazing. My parents would always talk about it, and that Haiti is one of the most beautiful countries in the Caribbean. I mean, a lot of them are beautiful, honestly, but Haiti is standing for the land of the mountains.
Heck, I'm even just looking at just general pictures of Haitian landscape. I mean, it's fucking gorgeous.
It's really nice. But yeah, it's actually pretty interesting knowing the influence that the Tainos, the indigenous people, had on the Caribbean itself, and the naming. The name Jamaica comes from the Arawak word Jamaica, which means land of wood and water, or land of springs. And then the Spanish gave the Caribbean island its current name in the 16th century. Bahamas term comes from Lushan word Bahama, which means large upper middle island. Boricua comes from the Taino name for Puerto Rico, Boriquen, which means land of the brave lord. And then that's what Puerto Ricans use now to express pride in their heritage. And then hurricane comes from the Taino word huracan, which means storm or evil spirit of the wind. Just some fun facts.
And now, here's where everything starts to go downhill. In December of 1492...
Hey, I remember that song.
Christopher Columbus landed on the island and claimed it for the Spanish crown, renaming the island La Isla Española, or the Spanish Island. Very inventive name. On December 24th, one of Columbus's ships, the Santa Maria, you've probably heard of it, ran aground and sank the next day. Its timbers were used to construct a military fort on the north of the island named La Navidad, after the date of the ship's sinking, Christmas Day. Too bad the other two didn't sink as well. Columbus loaded his ships with Taino slaves to demonstrate the wealth of the New World, because they did not find gold immediately.
Because that's how that works.
Right. So in order to demonstrate the wealth of the land that he had quote-unquote discovered, he loaded his ship with slaves. I believe it was about 500 slaves. About 200 of them died on the voyage, and most died very shortly after that.
Wait, so Chase, are you telling me that Christopher Columbus, the pride of Italy, for some reason Italian Americans, was just a slave trader?
Yes.
Is that what you're telling me right now, Jason?
Right. And
I say my heritage is bad?
Right, and sailing for Spain, too. So, yeah, why Italians want to claim him so badly, I don't know.
You know how many times I've been told as an Italian American that I should be more proud of Christopher Columbus? It is fucking wild.
Damn, I didn't know. I didn't know it was like that.
It's not really, but you got a bunch of old Italian boomers that will come up and be like, well, don't you know? And they have no clue about any of the history. They just sang the song, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492 for every day or every year on Columbus Day. It's the dumbest thing ever.
Okay. It's dude, it's funny because I feel like people also don't know sometimes that it's he got lost, which is why he was named the West Indies. He was trying to get
He was the most incompetent explorer of all time.
Never actually set foot in the continental North America.
No.
Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, there's rumors that he thought a manatee was a mermaid.
Yeah, and I have been to Florida and seen manatees, and I not really see the resemblance. I did kiss a manatee, in fact.
Don't kink shame Christopher Columbus, all right?
There's a lot on Christopher Columbus that they don't talk about. He was about to be a mutiny.
Yep.
On there, and then I guess another fun fact that I learned. Well, it's not really fun because he's a piece of shit,
right.
but the way that he gained like the indigenous people's trust was that he said that he knew the lunar schedule, and he said that there was going to be like a blood moon, something like that, coming up, but he just knew that there was going to be an eclipse. So he tricked them into thinking that he was like some, I guess, divine being, when it was really just, you know, the moon, sun blocking. It's like so much, because I know that they also say they like colonizers stunk, like they were lighting incense because
they were
it's
on
like
ships for months. I imagine they came.
Yeah, right. And they're thinking it's like, oh, look how they're treating us. They're treating us like gods, and it's like, no, you stink. There's a lot from his diary where how he like talked about them. It was like, oh, they're idiots. We can get them to give us anything, when they were just like being nice.
Right. Yeah, because you know, when you're welcoming to outsiders, that's a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
So then, of course, the Catholic Church has to chime in, and Pope Alexander VI issued a papal bull or decree, Inter Caetera, in which he authorized Spain and Portugal to colonize the Americas and its native peoples as subjects. The decree asserts the rights of Spain and Portugal to colonize, convert, and enslave. It also justified the enslavement of Africans. And then, when Columbus returned on his second voyage in 1493, this time he brought 17 ships and began a colony with around 1,000 European settlers. The native population was enslaved and used as free labor to build the colony. This was the first European settlement in the Americas and became a staging point for further colonization. So kind of a big point of emphasis here, Haiti is the first foothold for European colonization in the New World. And then, very unfortunate for the people that were there, gold was discovered on the eastern part of the island. The majority of the native population were enslaved to work in the mines. The total sum of gold extracted during the first 2 decades in the island was estimated at 66,000 pounds, an amount greater than the totality of production in Europe in those years, and above the total gold collected by the Portuguese in Africa. So 66,000 pounds of gold extracted from Haiti and sent back to Europe. All of that wealth just taken and nothing given back.
Don't worry, they left tons of bootstraps, though.
Yeah.
By 1508, the native Taino population had been reduced from hundreds of thousands to an estimated 60,000 due to mistreatment, malnutrition, and disease. By 1548, there were reportedly less than 500 remaining. Many had fled to the inland mountains to escape the slavers and established small settlements. So that is why when we say pre-Columbian is kind of prehistory on Haiti, it's because they genocided the entire population by enslavement and mistreatment. So whatever history there was gone.
Yeah, like I truly do not know much about it. And it's very unfortunate, because being a lover of history, it's like I would like to know about the people there before Columbus, but then it's like, well, they did a great job making sure that no one ever knows.
Right.
JB, can I ask you, like, what kind of stories you were told growing up about how Columbus came in?
My dad just told me he was a piece of shit.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, it's a more true history lesson than most of us learned in school. So
yeah, because I remember like talking about it in school, and at that time, it's like I think I was like 6 years old when I'm first learning about Christopher Columbus, and like I was just saying something about it at home, and my dad got like super serious, and he was just like, Christopher Columbus is a piece of shit. He didn't do anything. He got lost. He's not a great person, and he's like, he brought diseases over. And I was just like, all right, fuck him. Like that really was it. Like I don't remember a time in my life where I didn't think Christopher Columbus wasn't like a shit person. Like he was just like, okay, you're just another, like really, you're just kind of like another shitty white man from history that just terrorized people, you know?
And how did that clash with maybe what, and I mean, you're a little bit younger than me, so there maybe times were a little differently, but how did that clash with what you learned in school?
I would get called out for distracting the class if like the teacher said something. I'm like, well, that's not everything. If I say like under my breath and things that I'm like, well, Columbus got lost. Little things like that, because I mean, I could stay quiet and not disrupt the class, because I was always taught, it's like, you know, you go to school, you don't disrupt the class. My dad is a huge history fan, fanatic, which is what made me love love history, and he would always teach me that they're going to teach you a false version of history. And he would tell me that it's like you're going to be taught like a European centered version of history, and they're not going to really tell you what really happened. So I would learn whatever I learned in school, and I'd be like, that's just what you're saying. That's what's in the books, whatever. And then when I go home with my dad, he would give me like the real stuff. And then once I got the internet, it was a wrap, because my dad pretty much forced me to learn how to use the internet myself. And if I came with like some information, he was a little too, what's the word I'd look for? A little too intense, but he would like, well, where'd you get this information from? Is this like a good site? And I'm 7 years old. And he would be like, all right, well, when I would ask a question, he would tell me like, go look it up, go look in our encyclopedia, or go look in our digital encyclopedia. You remember those back in like the
CD-ROM? Yeah.
Yeah. So he would like test me and make sure that my information was correct, because he didn't always say it, but he did know that it's like you're going to be taught a version of history that is more focused on celebrating the wins of white people instead of just what actually happened and the like true history, regardless of what side I take. I guess it's just like you need to know what actually happened to form a real opinion, not be fed like this bullshit about, oh, he was such a great person, you know?
Yeah, and again, like I was saying before, you had kids that were learning songs about him. You know, we learned all about his ships and all the fun stuff. You see little cartoons and little children's books about it nonstop. And it was wild to me. I mean, granted, you know, I'm just a freaking white guy from the burbs of Wisconsin, but like that it took me so long to finally realize how bullshit it actually all was. And that's something I think you're touching on that's really important, which is just the general different experience that many white kids did not share in that type of experience that you did. And I think that's a very scary thing when you realize like the scale of that for this country.
I don't think I heard anything negative about Christopher Columbus, at least until I was in high school.
No, well, and I think my experience was being an ignorant little white boy and then having other students of color. Granted, I went to like a mostly white school because that's how our county worked. And basically they would all say like, well, you know, he sucked, right? And then kids would bully the shit out of those people because they were like not towing the line.
Right, he's a hero. It's, you know, he discovered America, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And it's just, it's wild to think about how that's a reason kids are getting bullied in school for stuff like that. And we even see it all the way through till today. We're now like even just trying to explain that history. Like JP, like what you were literally saying, like the history that your dad was trying to teach you is now considered like CRT.
Right.
And that's being pushed back against to make it more white perspective in schools.
Yeah, it's a scary thing. And it's interesting because I didn't have that experience. And I think it's due to, I was mostly raised and in like predominantly black areas. So like, my time that I spent, so it's like I was in a Baptist daycare. So I was around in Baltimore County. So I'm around nothing but black people. And then for like kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade, I was in a predominantly white school. But I was so young at that time, I don't remember much from it. And at that time, you know, Christopher Columbus was taught, but I'm not expressing myself the same way. It's like I don't even really fully care. And it was like a culture shock too, because I'm like, this is my first time being around a whole bunch of people that don't look like me. But then right after that, I went to another Baltimore County school and predominantly black. So I was in these areas to where nobody cared about Christopher Columbus. Like no one gave a shit. Like they would teach us certain things, but it's like he wasn't idolized in the same way, or he wasn't an important part of history. Like he was there, but I was never seeing any important side to him because everyone looked like me or was Hispanic, and they're all like, yeah, fuck Christopher Columbus. So that's the sentiment around. And it wasn't until I got into my 10th grade year, where I moved to Fredericksburg, Virginia, which was a good mix, like white, black kids, Hispanic kids, where then like arguments would happen and debates would happen in class, especially when Obama was getting elected and a lot of things going on. But at that point, it's like nobody was even going to try to attempt to bully me because I wasn't fighting at that point, but I was still almost like the same size I am now. So it's very interesting seeing like the different experiences that people had depending on the area that they lived in and like the age and time period, you know? I feel sorry for people who didn't get to have that experience because being a minority in certain areas with a different opinion can be pretty like dangerous for you sometimes.
And especially now.
Oh yeah.
So we have most of the native population of the island killed by enslavement and forced labor. So then the Spanish crown authorized importing slaves from Africa, but at this point the gold reserves had mostly dwindled and the conquistadors had moved on to Mexico and Peru in search of more mineral wealth, leaving the island prey to raids from French and British pirates. The western part of the island and there's a small island off of the west coast, Tortuga Island, had become settled by French buccaneers.
Okay.
So not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but French ones. And that brings us to the San Domingue portion of the history, where there was fighting between the French and the Spanish for some time. They then eventually signed the Treaty of Ridge. I have no idea how that's pronounced.
You nailed it.
Which was ratified in 1697 and ceded the western third of the island to the French, who named their new territory San Domingue. And that is still why now there are two countries on the island of Hispaniola. You've got Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And this is why, because you had the French and the Spanish basically both carving out parts of the island. By the end of the 18th century, thanks to the imported African slave labor, it became a highly profitable colony for France, exporting coffee, indigo, cocoa, cotton, and primarily sugar. 2/3 of French colonial resources were devoted to San Domingue, which was most likely the most profitable colony in the world, known as the Pearl of the Antilles. And this is including America, which was a British colony. So even more profitable than America at this point in history because of all of the agricultural wealth that existed on this island. So first it's exploited by the Spanish for their mineral wealth, which is all extracted and goes to Spain. Now it's being exploited by the French for their agricultural wealth, which is being extracted and sent to France.
And they're also bringing settlers with them as well, right?
They're establishing colonies. They're also bringing in, as we'll talk about in a second, hundreds of thousands of African slaves to the island to supply their new plantation system that they had set up. Estimates are that the French imported almost 800,000 African slaves to the colony, which is almost double the amount that were brought to North America. So this huge influx of population, we've killed off all the native population. Now they're bringing in African slaves because they're not going to do the work themselves. And so we're further depleting the vast wealth of this island.
Sounds about right. Historically, let's rob this place of its wealth.
Yep. We always see like these sci-fi movies of like the things where these like insectoid aliens come and they rip up all the resources from the planets and they go off. Like, yeah, we've done that throughout history. Like that's the history of colonization, of like just stripping things bare and moving on and leaving the people that were there with nothing.
So, but this is why there is that through line of supposedly the island of Haiti being seen as the poorest country, because you just have just tons of just genocide and, like you said, just tons of stripping of all their resources away from them. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing it just continues then after that.
Yeah, we are not done yet. By 1789, estimated population was 556,000, including 500,000 African slaves, 32,000 European colonists, and 24,000 Affranchis, I'm probably mispronouncing that as well, who were basically the free peoples of mixed African and European descent on the island. Now, as we were saying, between the Spanish, who brought in livestock like pigs, cows, and horses, the plantation system that was installed by the French has taken a major toll on the landscape of the island. Soil productivity has dropped sharply in many areas. Previously bountiful streams had dried up under the colonial rule, and this combined with the massive overpopulation, as they're bringing in all of these slaves, they're not spreading them throughout the island, they're being concentrated where the plantations are, and they're having to rely, the enslaved people are not getting, they're not getting supplied by France. France is bringing bringing in supplies for the colonists so that they can live, those 32,000 European colonists.
Right. But not for anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not bringing in food to feed the slaves.
Correct.
The slaves are having to live off of what they can scratch out of the soil that is not good enough to use for the plantations. And all of that, everything that they're farming it's being exported and being sold. The conditions are terrible. If you are a slave on this island, you're barely scraping by, living just on whatever you can manage to grow in the worst soil, that they will let you have for your own subsistence. And it led to the highest rate of mortality and violence of any enslaved population in the Americas. Average lifespan was only 21 years for a slave on San Domingue.
Jeez.
And then something that still very much reverberates throughout history and into today. The French implemented a caste system based on race, with the Grand Blancs, the wealthy aristocratic whites, at the top, followed by the Petit Blancs, made up of white overseers and tradesmen, Blanc Menants, consisting of small farm owners and laborers, at the bottom of the white hierarchy, and they kind of occupied the same status as the gens de couleur libre. My French is horrible, so I'm sure that's great. Or free men of color, which consisted of mixed race peoples and former slaves that had bought or earned their freedom. Many of the free men of color held significant economic and political power in the colony, which created resentment and jealousy among the lower classes of whites, much like you see today.
Sure.
What we talked about before.
Was there, I'm guessing there probably was, but was there continued caste prejudices that transpired even like throughout the African communities, like after all that happened, like for like hundreds of years?
Yeah, it's still...
Because I think back to like, you have like the Indian caste system that still like, is very prevalent today, things like that too. You have different types of European castes that are still like not talked about, but they're still definitely pushing for things like that. Also, you have American racism at the end of the day too. Right. That's another caste. But yeah, I was just curious if it had like any like general like social dynamic as well, even within the communities.
It still is a part of Haitian culture now.
Okay.
Where like, it's still a very fractured society because of that. There were different colonies at different points set up in the north versus the south, and it was based on those caste hierarchies, and you had like basically in and out groups that everybody thought they were better than everybody else based on what caste that they kind of descended from, and no one would get along. It meant that Haiti could never truly be unified.
Sure.
Honestly. And I don't know what your experience is, JP, with this, if you've heard much from your parents about that system and kind of how it influences even now, or if they had experience with it growing up.
Yeah, so it definitely, like, my parents have talked about it, and it's maybe not as much a political system. How I'll pretty much put it is that throughout history, the lighter you are, the better off you will be. Sure. Because you're further away from being like black. So if you have a little bit of white in you, then it's like, okay, maybe you can pass for a white person, or you can say that you're something else, but just not being black. So it definitely has played a role, because people used to, they still do, but in a way, idolizing being lighter skinned. And for a lot of black people, it's like the lighter skin comes from either being like mixed, like somewhere down the line, someone married a white person, or, raped by a slave master, and different.
All those the descendants of Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, like it's like different treatment, but you're still a slave. Like you might have a little bit more, freedoms in a sense, but you're still a slave. Like you're not a freed person, and that's why things like the one drop rule in America is such a big thing. It's like if we can even trace a little bit of blackness to you, it's like you're black. And that's where I say it's like these systems were put in place, and maybe it's like, they're not living by it anymore, but the damage it did to the mental state is very serious, and like it's mental chains of slavery, which people don't like to acknowledge, because even things like that, like where, if you're a mixed race person and the freedoms, opportunities you got, or how you were viewed, goes even into today, where there's many people like me, that family members that we have, older generation, where they can't stand to see like our hair in its natural state, like an afro. It's like, no, you should straighten it or cut it off. And that stems from things like this. It's like your hair isn't closer to a white person's. Your hair is more African, Afrocentric. And we were raised to not like that. So you need to like get rid of it. And things like dreads were seen as like, oh, you're a vagabond, what they call, or a salope, you're dirty, you're a gangster, whatever. It's like it was demonizing those extremely like Afrocentric features while praising the more like white features. So it's something that plagues Haitian community, but not just Haitian community, also the Black community in general. And you see it in America too. And it even goes as far to things like within our civil rights. Everyone knows like Rosa Parks and the story with that. But there was actually another girl, and I wish I always forget her name. It was Rosa Parks and then a Black lady who was darker skinned, and she had a child. And they used Rosa Parks instead. They both had the same, like the girl, she was disrespected on the bus and the same type of thing. Like she had to give up her seat. She was working, something like that. But NAACP was like, we don't know if we can use her because one, she's like darker skinned and she has a child and she's young. But then we have Rosa Parks, who's lighter skinned, fairer skinned, and maybe we can use her to get our point across, because when you're darker, sometimes people will care less. But if you're lighter, people will see you more as human, which is an unfortunate thing.
Claudette Colvin.
I need to remember that. I keep on forgetting.
And actually, I think there is a big issue with that, and that's where I was kind of curious about myself. Some of the friends that I have also have it kind of in the reverse way as well, where it's like they want to be extremely proud of their Black identity, and however they tend to get bullied for even wanting to have different like white friends or, you know, non-Black friends or things like that, or even just marrying somebody who's not Black as well. And I think there's a lot of bullying with that as well, where it's just you're not doing exactly what is expected of you traditionally. And I think having that type of trauma for generations instills that type of stuff for a lot of people, and it legitimately sucks because obviously, like, you know, you have the bullshit that lots of, you know, racist people always try to throw out, which is like, well, we shouldn't even worry about all these groups or anything like that. We should just worry about, you know, people just want to be on their own. They want to get ahead on their own, things like that. Like, sure, you're right. But we can't ignore the context of where that trauma came from at the same time. It was kind of what I think.
And I do agree. It's like it comes from somewhere. And there's a sense, I feel like as a community, like we've been hurt and ostracized, marginalized, and, you know, beat up, everything that you can think of. So then you kind of want to keep, like, you close the borders, like keep it all within yourself. Like don't stray out. Don't go out there and like mingle with different people.
Yeah.
Because you know what that can get you. And it is like a form of like you said, it's a traumatic response. And I've even had my hesitations, you know, talking to certain people, because I'm like, what do you think of me? I know the threats that you can pose to me in a certain way, yet like maybe not physical. Like I'm maybe not worried about you trying to beat me up, but it's also there's the mental threats where, oh, I think I'm in a safe space with friends or colleagues, and then here you go, you bust out like some super racist stuff.
Yep.
And this happened to me before, where it's like, oh, you're one of the good ones. It's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And it's especially when I was working in Wisconsin in the warehouse, and it was very interesting because it was a big mix, like Black people and more like, I guess you would say like rural white people.
Sure.
And then you had so it was all blue collar. So blue collar on the docks, blue collar in the warehouse. And then it was like white collar in the office, but they would still kind of be like sketchy. Like maybe they had they understood nuances enough to maybe not be racist in your face the same way, but you could still get like some of those microaggressions.
Yep. It's that weird discomfort.
Yeah. And it's like certain comments that would be made. It's like, oh, I was like, what are y'all homeboys doing? It's like, you don't talk like that.
What is up, my man?
I was saying it's all my family who watch the Super Bowl halftime show.
And it would be very awkward. And I remember there's a podcast I used to love listening to. It was from NPR. I think Stuff You Missed in History Class. It maybe wasn't NPR, but Stuff You Missed in History Class. And then I would listen to NPR's podcasts like Hidden Brain, or just other different news sources. And when they would be talking about certain topics, I could always feel like the tension and people, because I would put it right on the Bluetooth speaker and like be blasting it. And because it's like, this is history and it's making you uncomfortable. And I could feel it. Like people would walk by, and if they're talking about like the Black Panthers, history that people don't know about them, or Haitian Revolution, anything, it's like you could feel it. You could cut the tension. It was just like they would walk by and make like a face. But then the funny thing is, when someone would be listening to like Alex Jones or Bill O'Reilly or anybody just going on like placating to that racism, it's like, oh, that's normal. Like that's okay. But you listening to this historically accurate information or anything that sounds like it's pro-Black, it's like they immediately would kind of like tense up and not say too much. It was really weird because there's always been a thing, and I've talked about it, where it's like pro-Black doesn't mean anti-white. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people can feel that way because pro-white usually means anti-everything else.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I also think back to like, oh God, it's been years now. Trevor Noah was talking about his experiences with racism both in South Africa versus America, and where he was saying it's so weird experiencing racism in America because in South Africa, they're just going to be straight racist to your face. It doesn't matter. But in America, they will have to constantly just, like you said, it's just that weird discomfort the entire time. They won't ever say it to you, but you just feel like it's there. And it's, as someone who definitely grew up in that type of discomfort, I mean, the amount of times that I have to now still tell people like Milwaukee County is like the most segregated county in the entire country, and it still blows the locals here away. It's real.
Yeah, that's, if you like, I know we got sidetracked, but I'm just curious, and I wanted to ask, with you guys growing up in Wisconsin, I'm not sure where you grew up, Jason. I'm assuming Wisconsin.
Yes.
Okay, so with you guys growing up in Wisconsin, and it, like you said, Wisconsin is one of the most Milwaukee is one of the most segregated cities ever in the country. Mm-hmm. How did you guys get to where you're at? Because when I moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, it was culture shock for me. I was like, what? Like, where the hell am I? This is like, even being in Fredericksburg, Virginia, going from there, because I'm really from the Montgomery County, the DMV area, Baltimore. So a lot of people that look like me. Fredericksburg, I had a pocket of people that look like me. Moved to Wisconsin, unless I'm in Milwaukee, in like specifically north side, sometimes south side.
As we said, very segregated.
Yeah. So it's like, how did you guys get to where you're at? To where were you always there, or you kind of had like that curiosity, which I always feel like curiosity plays a role. It's like, well, why are people thinking this way? Let me go look this up. Let me talk to someone. So how'd you get there?
I have a decent one. So basically, I grew up on the south side of Milwaukee County. Just tons of white burbs. And actually, I would say 2015, 2016, around that time, I got approached by somebody to join a band. I'm a drummer myself, so I was a gigging musician for a while, and we had a pretty good diverse group for our band. We had about 12 people because we had like a horn section as well, and we were pretty much 50-50, I want to say, and it was really good just having that type of diversity, and it exposed me to a lot of stuff there. But specifically, I think what pushed me really hard was our band leader, who was Black, was very comfortable playing on the north side, so we did lots of gigs on the north side of Milwaukee, which for lots of, we'll say, suburban white people, and they're like, that's like a no-go zone for a lot of people because they're so fucking terrified. I'm not kidding, man. Like, when I talked to like another coworker a couple years ago who like is an older white guy, he was blown away that I went into like the third ward because he thought a group of Black guys was gonna come up and shoot me because I was white. It was insane. So I think just the overall fear that people have, and me being pushed farther and farther, like I was still pretty skeptical of that narrative before I joined the band, but I think forcing me to actually get out of my comfort zone and play in areas that I would have never gone to got me to experience a whole new area of the city that I now absolutely love. So I think that was kind of where I started really going.
I don't have an interesting story. For me, it's all just intellectual. I mean,
you're just a smart guy, man.
Well, meaning that I haven't had much I mean, like, I've been talk about segregation. Like, my family is Polish and English, and, you know, I certainly experienced a lot of seeing racism around them and how a lot of people behaved, and I just was never comfortable with it. I never understood it. I didn't really understand why they were like that, and so I always just kind of grew up knowing that it was wrong. That's what everyone will tell you, it's wrong, right? Openly, everyone says it's wrong. So I just kind of took that to heart, and I've never been someone that's had a lot of exposure, unfortunately, to other cultures naturally. I've had to, seek out
the information.
Basically. Yeah, I mean, I live in Muskego. You
don't see a lot.
You don't see anyone who's not white for miles and miles around. But it's always just been something where I never understood race. I love other cultures. Like America is.
If you could list and rank your favorite cultures, Jason.
Well, I mean, if you think about like what is American culture, at the heart of it, you want to say like, well, it's native culture, right?
Yeah.
But then, well, what is it beyond that? Like now in modern times, it's what everyone brings to it. So in those, you in school, in grade school, right? I went to a Catholic grade school. There were maybe 2 people of color in the whole school. But yeah, so there were very few people of color that I was exposed to. But whenever you do those, everybody does like the presentations of like, in world history, like what's your history? And everybody in our class has like the same thing, I lean into the Polish side because that's a little different than, England, but it was boring.
Yeah.
And so I always enjoyed the history of other cultures that weren't the same as everyone. And I think that has something to do with it, but yeah.
And I think weirdly enough, JP, my wife actually had a similar experience to you coming in. Granted, she's white, but she came from the Virginia area as well, and she moved up here for work, and it was the same thing. She's like, yeah, I thought I kind of knew what racism was. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's I guess it's different because when I got to Wisconsin, I was 22. So when you're 22, you understand things a little bit better. And I hadn't seen what segregation can look like.
Sure.
You're driving through Baltimore or Montgomery County, and it's like one area, it's nice, and then you go a little further, and all of a sudden you see a bunch of like Western Union cash your check here, liquor stores,
right.
the bulletproof casing at the chicken spots, whatever you call it. So it's like I had seen it, but then it's like when I got to Wisconsin, I was like, holy shit, like this is like, it's crazy. Like Wauwatosa, it's like one street over or like 2 streets.
Yep.
And then it's just completely different.
Yep.
And then like talking with people where it's like Wisconsin, I would say is like a little bit friendlier than like an East Coast place. But then I was like, you guys are like hella racist. Like it was more blatant racism that I had ever seen, like talking with certain people at like jobs. And I'm just like, how are you saying this? And you like think it's fact. Like this is crazy to me right now.
Exactly.
But it's like they won't say it to you right up front. But it's like you talk to them for a little bit, and then you see it's like, whoa, this is what you think. Like this is crazy. And also I would say probably because when I was in Virginia, I've always had like a few white friends here and there, but I always was more so like my friend group with people that looked like me mostly, and then I'd have like white friends. But it was when I got into MMA where I really like MMA is predominantly white,
Sure.
And especially in Virginia, in Fredericksburg, Virginia. So that's where I actually started coming around more like white people, and I didn't realize how little I actually knew about white people until I got into MMA. And then when I moved to Wisconsin, and one of my friends, he was like, he's kind of like you in a sense, Jason, but then also a little bit like you, Joe, where he played music and he was just in an area, happened to like make friends with certain people, but was always curious. And it just kind of like formed that way to where he just wasn't thinking like the people that he was around.
Yep.
But he also was like, he was becoming a music teacher, and but he's from Racine, and he would like fill me in on a lot of different things, and I was just like, bro, I didn't realize how little I actually knew about white people, and I didn't realize how much of a bubble I was actually in within my own culture, which is, I think it was like almost a good thing because I didn't have to experience a lot of like negative things that other people had that maybe integrated way more a lot earlier, because I was, like you said, I was a little bit more hesitant to mingle heavily because I was like, this isn't safe. Like I feel like I could get, like if something happens, you guys might get away with it and the cops let you go.
Oh yeah.
I was taught that I'm either A, going to be shot, or B, get arrested.
Yeah.
So it is very interesting, but I've always had, kind of like you, Jason, I've been curious and I want to learn about people. And when I moved to 2015 was where I actually started learning a lot more and just seeing like even some people that have like these prejudices, these bias, maybe a little bit racist. It's like I talk to them, I'm like, you're not like a bad person. Like you're not evil. You're not any of these things, but you have like this fear, like you were talking about, Joe.
Yeah.
And because I used to be like, if you're racist, like go fuck off, like go jump off a cliff. And there is still a level of that to me, but I'm also, it's like I've met so many people where I'm like, you're actually like a good dude. Like, why are you thinking like this? This is wild. And like Wisconsin is where I started having like a little bit of where my shifts started changing, where it's like, okay, some people cannot be talked to at all, but other people, it's like maybe not patience is the correct word, but understand it's like you're just, you guys get what I'm saying? It's like kind of, it's hard to explain.
I think you're hitting it right on the head, because I don't know how much you followed politics, and like weirdos like me and Jason, but during the 2020 Democratic primary, if you remember, Senator Cory Booker out of New Jersey was running for president, and he got into a lot of trouble because he said basically something similar to what you said, which was that I think it was something along the lines of saying we need to be patient as Black Americans for white Americans, and trying to explain ourselves. And of course he got a lot of heat saying I don't need to explain my identity to fucking anyone, fuck off, like totally 100% understand that. But I think you hit the nail on the head though, which is a lot of people, especially like in our state, Jason, I would argue the same thing. Like they're not necessarily like just outwardly explicitly bad, hateful people for a lot of them. It's just that this is so ingrained at a systemic level that it's just poisoned a lot of minds throughout the generations.
Well, and as we said, they've been fed this like us versus them stuff forever. And we talked about it happening under Ronald Reagan, and obviously we're seeing the same exact thing here today, mostly directed at Mexico, Central and South American immigrants, but it's all the same thing. It's all just trying to stoke fear and hatred and using that to get power and money.
Yeah.
And it's always been like that, which is the crazy part, because I want to hit on what you said, Joe, about the Cory Booker thing, and it's like it's unfortunate because I understand what like he was saying, but then also there's the part of me where, and like a sentiment with the community itself, where it's like it's not our job to teach you as well.
Exactly.
And granted, when you're in politics, it's like anything you say, you will get scrutinized heavily, even if what you're saying, it's like people are like, I get the gist of what you're saying because it's a controversial topic. But I feel like for me, I used to be arguing with people left and right on Facebook for pretty much ever since Trayvon Martin was murdered.
Oh, yeah.
Up until a little bit after the pandemic, it wouldn't be, and it just steadily increased. And then it got to a big spot when during the election between Hillary and Trump, because that's when a lot of people like really let out their true feelings. And like over time, like 2020, after the pandemic, like 2022, I was like, you know what? I'm not arguing with people the same way, nor do I feel like I have to teach you anything, but I can also be able to discern when someone's being malicious and when someone is just a little ignorant, or if someone who's curious, maybe grew up with biases, but they're curious and are willing to hear what you have to say. And it's like I feel like you kind of have to be able to differentiate. Now, no one is obligated, and I always say that it's like as a person of color, or me being Black, or people of color, it's like you're not obligated to teach anybody, but you would be surprised with how many people, like I said, aren't bad people. They're just confused, and there is an issue with people don't want to seek the truth. Like they're fine with just being told whatever, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just run with that. But it's very difficult, because like you were talking about your friend that was like, you're going to the third ward, it's like some Black guy is gonna just go down and shoot you just for being white. It's like, no, that's not really how it works. A lot of crimes happen, crime usually happens in proximity with who's around you, and by the statistics, you're more likely to be murdered by the person within your race. And another thing, people usually know the person that they're committing a crime against. Now, there are times when it's like it's completely unprovoked. They don't know you and it is like bad timing, everything like that. But most people, especially like there's always this sentiment of like black people being criminals or whatever it is. It's like you talk to most black people, like they're not trying to do anything because just like everybody else, there's criminals within every group.
Right.
The majority of them are just trying to get by.
Right. And I think that's the big thing with like the north side of Milwaukee, where it's like you have people who are just terrified to go there. I said, let alone just Milwaukee, they're terrified to go to, but but also on the north side, I'm like, just go there and walk around just for a little bit. Just go out to eat somewhere over there. It like, just do it. You'll feel just immense weight of fear just drift away. And then you realize, oh, I was just fed so much bullshit over these years. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you said. Exactly. I agree with everything you said.
Like maybe don't go there at night, like at 11 o'clock when you walk in the streets.
Right. Well, and exactly. Again, be safe wherever you go, right?
And don't just walk into a random neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's always bad regardless.
Yeah, it is. It's sad because there's a lot of great restaurants on the north side, and I wish it was off of North 82nd Street, and I was near like Fond du Lac Avenue and all that, and really close to Kit's Frozen Custard, I think.
Okay.
That was the name of it. There's a good Jamaican spot called Up a Yard. So I was north side and not exactly where it's horrible, but bad enough to where the first day we moved in, I was about to go to the gym and I heard a drive-by and I just went right back inside my house. But there's crime in a lot of different spots.
Well, and crime tends to follow poverty.
Exactly.
That's the biggest indicator. So wherever there's large impoverished populations, there's going to be crime.
Well, and I think that may actually be a weird, good segue back into the Haiti stuff. Because when you have, again, communities are just completely stripped of what they can get out of them, crime tends to rise from that. And because you have demand being really high and supply for things are just extremely low.
That is very true.
With the amount of recording that we've been doing here, I think that's going to be a good stopping point for what we're now going to be calling part 1 of our colonial history of Haiti. We're kind of up to the Haitian Revolution, and there's so much with that and the post-revolution that I think we're going to go 2 episodes.
I love it.
So we're going to have JP back. He's agreed graciously. We did not kidnap him.
Blink twice or tap him twice.
Yeah, you're just, since it's like an audio medium, you're just like saying all the things you're doing. I'm blinking. I'm blinking.
And no one can see you blinking Morse code on an audio podcast.
I just have to tap my microphone to make it effortless.
So, JP, if people want to see what you're up to, what you're doing, if they want to follow your MMA career, if you've got a lot of funny videos on Facebook, if they want to see those, where should they go?
Yeah, so you can follow me on IG at JP_too much, and that's fully spelled out, TOOMUCH, and also on YouTube. My Facebook, JP St. Louis, JP Too Much St. Louis. That's my fight page. But I'm on TikTok, but I'm not on there as much. I'm really trying to build my YouTube up. My main things are YouTube and Instagram. And my videos from Instagram go straight to my Facebook. I'm glad you're enjoying the funny videos, though.
Yeah, you are. And people may not know this based on your background and everything that you've talked about so far, but you are a huge anime fan.
Dude.
Huge.
I literally jumped on your YouTube and I just saw anime takeover in MMA. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to build my YouTube up, and that video is my most recent video that I posted, and just getting more comfortable with talking about the things that I like. And my 3 main interests have always been anime, martial arts, and cooking.
Hell yeah.
So those are like the 3 things that and obviously like I love humor. I love telling jokes. I like to consider myself quite the goofy person in a sense, but yeah, I just want to spread my love of something. It's like it's played a big role in my life, and I also think that's how I dealt with a lot of different things, using my love of anime and then discipline that comes from martial arts.
Yeah. Well, I think we've been talking about this before, Jason, too, which is like one of my favorite things in the entire world right now is the idea that we're just completely throwing out the notion that you have to either be athletic or nerdy. And you just have so many more people now that's like, yeah, man, like I work out 3 times, 4 times a week. I buff as shit. And guess what? I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna watch something happen on some anime like Naruto on TV. Let's fucking go. Like, it's one of my favorite things what's happening right now. So no, I absolutely love all of this.
Yeah, it's so relieving because it wasn't like that before.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be arguing with people so much. It's like Baltimore County, like nobody cared about anime like that. If it wasn't Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball Z or Pokemon,
right?
It's like anything other than that, it's like, bro, you're a nerd. Like, shut the fuck up. And it's like arguing with people. And I do feel like that's where I got good at having witty comebacks, roasting people. Because I was not left alone. I'm Haitian. I was chubby. I loved anime. But then it's like, I can fight. It's like, I am athletic.
I may have looked up some pictures of you while we were doing this just to make sure I knew who I was talking to. Dude, you are fucking cut. Holy shit.
Thanks.
I am so jealous.
A lot of time training, man.
So are you watching anything now currently? You're an anime fan. You watching anything that's new right now?
So I've been watching the newest Dragon Ball series called Dragon Ball Daima.
Oh, yeah. How is it?
I like it a lot because one, rest in peace, Akira Toriyama.
Yeah.
The creator of Dragon Ball. And I had to watch that. That was like the last thing that he was a part of. And Dragon Ball Z, even though it's not like my favorite anime, but it's the anime that holds kind of the most influence over a lot of things with me. It was my first anime. And I should say it's not my favorite based on story.
Yep.
But it's my favorite due to like the importance, the lore, just me, like my whole life. I don't really remember a time where I didn't know what Dragon Ball Z was. So Dragon Ball Daima is really good. It gives that old school Dragon Ball feeling when Goku was just a kid.
Nice.
So I'm watching that right now. I read a lot of manga, actually.
Nice.
That's one of my favorite things. So One Piece is what I'm reading. Sakamoto Days.
Dang.
Okay. I'm not a huge fan of the anime Sakamoto Days. I've heard that the manga might be better.
I haven't even started watching Sakamoto Days because I almost feel like it is very hard to read something and then watch it.
I get you.
I feel like it's easier to watch and then be like, I need to know what happens next and then start reading. A lot of books that I've read that like Hunger Games, Harry Potter, Allegiance series, or World War Z, I started reading the book because the movie was interesting. And then I'm like, okay, there's a book. I know the book is better because it goes into more detail.
Right. You get that expanded view. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a little bit slower. Everything is explained a little bit more. And I feel like I do consider myself a nerd and I like intellectual type things. So it's like, I'm going to go deeper and like find the lore interesting. Majority of the YouTube videos I watch is lore on various different shows that I like, or Star Wars, comic books, anime, history, whatever it may be. So I like to get into the weeds with a lot. So that I think that's why I like the manga more.
My wife's currently reading the Dan manga right now. She
I did love that.
She loved the show, and now she's like, I need to read this. And so she's tearing through it, which I think is hilarious.
All you guys are anime manga appreciators, lovers.
Yep.
See, this is my element.
I really like Solo Leveling Season 2.
We've paused it because we're working our way through Haikyuu right now.
Okay.
But yeah,
that's a good one.
So we're trying to work through. I'm trying to get my wife caught up on Haikyuu, and then we're gonna go back into Solo Leveling for the second season again.
And I have read all of the Solo Leveling manhwa because it's Korean.
Oh shit.
And I've even started. Well, I'm up to date now on the sequel series Ragnarok.
Okay.
Oh, they have a sequel series?
Yep. Yeah. Solo Leveling Ragnarok.
Okay. Well, now you and I learned something, Jimmy.
Well, seriously, I didn't know. I haven't watched the second season yet. Is it done? Did they finish it?
Not yet.
No.
You see, I think I'm gonna just wait till it's done because I love Solo Leveling.
It's such a good show to binge.
I haven't watched Don yet though.
Oh,
it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so.
I keep hearing that.
Stupid, and it's so good. It's like the perfect stupid anime. I highly recommend it.
Very Fooly Cooly if you've.
Yeah.
Fooly.
Yeah.
And actually, that was
Fooly was like a fever dream to me because I would always wake up when it was on. That sounds good. I need to watch it. I remember a Japanese teammate of mine. He was like you need to read or what, like read Don the Don. And then I was like, okay, I put it on my list. Then I never read it. And then a year and a half later, it comes up and I'm like, that's the manga he was telling me to read. And it's like, no surprise, it blew up.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wild story, and it's a very perfect level of stupid that just makes it really funny. That's awesome, man. We'll absolutely include all of those links in the show notes for this episode. This was one of the most fun episodes I've done in a long time for this show. I'm really happy you got to be on it. So, and it's an absolute pleasure to meet you as well. So find us next time. We will do a part 2 of the history of Haiti. See you next time.
Yay.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to get in contact with us, you can find us on Blue Sky at ThinkProPod, or you can reach out to us via email at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively.